Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about security. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, is the security of an application always added at the late stage of development, almost as an afterthought? And I suppose the short answer is yes, almost always. But not always. I'll give you, at least from my perspective, the times when this may not be the case. And usually the only time security becomes a factor is in one of two situations. And we're talking now as more than an afterthought, usually before something really bad happens. So usually the first scenario, which is most common, is due to compliancy reasons. Now, for those of you who may never have worked in the the government or with institutions such as banks or military or like anything that has a heavy amount of regulation, like insurance, stuff like that, you may not know what we're talking about when we talk about compliance. But compliance, if you ever get into this space, I mean, if you can avoid it, please don't. No, I'm not going to say you shouldn't, because if you get really good at compliancy, you can make a fuck ton of money from that, because it's a mess. It's a mess. Like, honest to God, I have in a few. I have started to kind of get around to the idea that maybe my long-term goal should be to become that guy who knows both the laws and compliance regulations, but I also know how to build them, because that is hard. Like, I know so many companies, even my own included. Like, you hire a person to just figure all of this out, and then they have to help all the developers figure out how should all of this work and like set up all of this proof. So it just comes down to that if you're running a company where compliance is a factor, the compliance basically states to you that you need to abide by certain rules, and these are things that you actually have to do, regardless of if you want to or not. Even if you feel like you're secured, doesn't matter, because it's the law that you have to abide by these rules, and you will get audited if and which means that they have a external company, some third party, who comes in, and they can do all manner of things depending on what compliance level you need to actually abide by. It can be from simple, like, or they're going to look at your source code, to they're going to look at like your internal server setups. They're going to try to do some pen testing. They might actually do physical things, like actually get to your place of work and actually check, do you have security doors, do you have a check-in system for who's actually there, etc. All of these things you have to deal with. And you like, when you're in that space, security is always a factor, but it's a factor not because you want to do it, because if the company didn't have to do it, I promise you they wouldn't. It's just that it is the law, and if they are not doing it and the auditor comes around, they're going to be slapped with a fine, and they might actually lose the entire company. It's a really big deal when it's a compliance discussion. The second time when I see security being more than an afterthought is when we're talking about issues that are so severe, that it's so risky, rather, that the company, if something goes wrong here, the company might go under. That's the sort of things that the security related topic, like, that's where you might start caring, right, about security. And so these are really the only times. But for the rest of it, like, most of the time, like, you're never ever going to see the same sort of attention to security, in general terms at the very least, as you see for things like, I don't know, user experience and all these other type of notions that we kind of have during the software development process, that just kind of organically comes up, like time estimates. I mean, there are you have all kinds of considerations when you're building software, and usually things like, how long is it going to take, is it going to work, like testing and things like that. These are the sorts of things you think about, but it's very rare that anybody cares about security at all. I mean, it's still the case that a lot of the most common, like, dangerous exploits and leaks and so forth come from the fact that people are simply not abiding by even the most basic things. I mean, An example would be you are source controlling your secrets, like API keys and stuff like that, to some API. It's still one of the most common ways that hackers can exploit your system to do that. Or things like being able to do cross-site scripting attacks on your system, like just add something to an input field and see if that works. And I mean, it's actually to the point where for quite a lot of languages there are already pre-made scripts that you can just basically download. You need absolutely no understanding whatsoever of programming or more technical and any more technical knowledge than you can gain from YouTube. You can literally, and I'm not shitting you now, I'm not saying that you're going to be a full-fledged pen tester, but I'm saying that if you wanted to figure out how to exploit a system, or like figure out different ways of doing that, it is as hard for you to do that as spending a few hours on YouTube and downloading the right tools and so forth. That's how automated a lot of these sorts of low-hanging fruit exploits are. The more advanced stuff, different story, and it takes a lot of skill to get it to be a really good pen tester, but that's how low security in general terms are, how low it is. So what I want you to take away from this is that definitely I think that we will see an increasing need, and we are already actually seeing an increasing need for security experts within the IT space. And it's very simple, because it's so hard to secure a system, and it requires so many. It can come from so many layers. It requires I would go even as far as to say that setting up a security strategy and like maintaining that, it's almost a full-time job to do that in an efficient manner. It's not something that you can do 100% of the time for one single company, but every single company needs these sorts of things. And the simple truth is that most product owners and POs and product managers, they don't even know how coding works. So it always comes back to the same damn thing every single time. It's your job, the developer, it's your job to know everything and be able to do everything and answer all questions and so forth. And at some point, you're just going to have to accept that you can't know everything. It's not possible. And even though we are moving towards a trend where companies want the developers to know more and put more and more emphasis because it's expensive to hire experts, there are certain things that you simply can't ask the developers to know. And knowing everything about security is one of those things. I think that it's reasonable to expect that developers know the basics, but for the more advanced stuff, no. And that's why, as I said, usually people don't care about that stuff, because one part, they don't know about it, and one part, it's very tricky. And most of the time when they actually do care is when they have to. And then the sane companies usually hire experts who know about compliance and stuff of that nature to fix everything. Have a great day.